Okay, hi Shivam, how are you?
Hi, Shreya. I'm good. Uh,
Okay, so can you tell me a little bit about yourself? From where did you graduate and when did you graduate? Or your work experience, a little bit about yourself.
yes. So I am Shubham. I have completed my graduation from VIT in
Mm-hmm.
2020, and after that,
Okay,
from 2021, I have been working as a front-end developer majorly. First, I have
okay.
worked in a small startup called as Object-H, where I was
Mm-hmm.
handling the whole front-end stuff. And now I'm
Okay.
working on. Like, I'm still working as a front-end developer, but with a
Mm-hmm.
different company called as
Okay. Okay, okay, got it. And can you also tell me a little bit about the tech stack that you are using in that company?
Yeah. So in our first in the first company, the project was an
Mm-hmm.
e-commerce project, and the tech stack basically in the front end where we were using React, Gatsby, and in the back
Okay.
end there was a framework for e-commerce called as Commerce Tools,
Mm-hmm.
and we were
Got
using
it.
GraphQL. Here, like
Okay.
in my like current company, in the front end we are using Next.js and React, and in the back
Mm-hmm.
end there's some kind of framework called as Pega, which we are using.
Okay.
Like
Great.
that is some kind of uh, we say like not kind of coding, but just like rules,
Mm-hmm.
configuration of rules. So that's what we are
Okay.
using. Majorly, my
Okay, got
role
it. So I can say,
included. Majorly, my role included
yeah, yeah,
working
go
as
on.
a front-end developer.
Okay, so I can say that you are quite familiar with JavaScript and React, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so we'll start with some basic JavaScript questions, then we'll go on to React.
Yeah, sure.
Is that okay, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
fine.
So, Shivam, can you tell me a little bit about closures? Like, what do you know about closures?
Yeah. So basically, in JavaScript, when we have two functions, right? Like there is a top function and a function
Mm-hmm.
nested inside it. So now, if
Mm-hmm.
I define a variable inside the main function and start
Mm-hmm.
using it inside the nested function, and
Mm-hmm.
if I call the main function and it completes its execution, right? Then this
Okay.
particular variable which is defined won't be available anymore, right? But
Mm-hmm. Got it.
with the help of closures, the second function which is nested inside can also access that
Mm-hmm.
particular variable even after the completion of the execution of the main function.
Okay, got it. So, have you used the concept of closures in any real project or in your company? Have you used it anywhere?
Like in real time, I have not used it anywhere, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but
Okay.
yeah, another concept.
Okay, but you are clear with the concept, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
correct.
great. So my second question would be you know about promises, right? Promises
Yes,
and async await.
yes,
Okay, so
yes.
what is the difference between a promise and async await, and when do we use what?
So basically, a promise is a object in JavaScript, and a
Mm-hmm.
promise has an executor function which executes some code, and this executor function has resolve and reject two functions. So
Right.
once we call resolve, right, so it will execute the dot then function. So in promises we can chain functions like dot then and dot catch. So whenever we call
Correct.
resolve, then this dot then what we say callback function will be executed, and whenever we
Mm-hmm.
call reject, then this
Mm-hmm.
dot catch function will be executed. This executor
Mm-hmm.
function is we can say synchronous, but this resolve and reject and the callbacks of dot then and dot catch are not synchronous.
Mm-hmm.
They are asynchronous. So for example, we did a
Okay.
API call, and then that API call
Mm-hmm.
will take us some time. And after the API call,
Mm-hmm.
we will do a resolve. So then
Mm-hmm.
it will call the callback function. So we don't have to
So it will go
wait.
inside then after the API give the response.
Yeah,
Okay.
when we
So
call
what is the
resolve,
need of what is the need of async await then?
yeah, async await is basically is a syntactic sugar over the promises, and it also
Right.
changes the code flow. So basically, when we await, right? So await means
Mm-hmm.
waiting for a promise. Like
Mm-hmm.
from backend, we will have an API. That API will be
Mm-hmm.
giving us some promise in a pending state maybe, and we will await
Mm-hmm.
for it, and like await either it is getting rejected and or
Mm-hmm.
it is getting like succeeded, and
Mm-hmm.
depending upon that we will do error handling in our main function. wherever we are calling that particular
Okay.
thing.
So according to you, is there any preference why we should use async await promises, or both are same? It's just the different right kind of syntax. What do you think?
Yeah, like 90% both are same. They are like
Hmm.
it's different kind of syntax only. It's like nowadays we are using async await only because it's like very easy to understand. But there are few
Correct.
differences. Like when we await, right, the code
Mm-hmm.
execution, the flow of execution stops at that particular function. But in a promise, that does not
Mm-hmm.
happen. So if I write a promise and if I write a
Mm-hmm.
console.log below it, then that log
Mm-hmm.
will also get printed even before the promise
Okay.
execution completes. But if I have a function in which I write await something and then there is a log below it,
Mm-hmm.
so this log will not be printed. It will first await for the whatever
Mm-hmm.
API call to finish, and then only this console.log will be printed. So there is a slight difference in how the code execution takes place also when we use
Okay.
async await
Great.
and when
Great.
we use promises.
Okay, got it. And you were saying something about synchronous and asynchronous, right? Can you quickly tell me the difference between what do you think asynchronous and synchronous is?
Yeah. So synchronous basically means like code will be executing line by line from top.
Mm-hmm.
Asynchronous means, so for example, there is something which takes time, like a API call. We don't know when it will be executed.
Mm-hmm.
So this particular
Mm-hmm.
function will be so basically not this whole function, the callback of this function. So whenever this API
Mm-hmm.
calls complete, right? Though, so whatever callback we will have, that will be put
Mm-hmm.
into the like what we call as callback queue via
Mm-hmm.
the event loop. And once that particular thing
Mm-hmm.
complete and our main thread is empty, then only this particular callback will be
Mm-hmm.
taken and will be put into the main thread. So basically, JavaScript is single threaded, so we cannot have
Correct.
blocking things inside JavaScript. So it won't block and like smooth flow of execution will be there. Otherwise, it will just stop the main thread, and if the main thread stops, then other things won't be executed.
Right, right, right. Great. Now, since you have touched the concept of event loop, can you also quickly tell me like what is the use of event loop and what it does basically?
Yeah. So event loop basically what it does is like it takes care of execution of our whole JavaScript code. So basically all
Mm-hmm.
the synchronous code, right? They will be put like one by one into the main thread, and all the
Mm-hmm.
asynchronous code, for example, a set timeout callback function or promises callback functions, those will be
Mm-hmm.
put into the like callback queue, and event loop will
Mm-hmm.
be checking the main thread and the callback queue. Once this like main thread is empty, right, it will start
Mm-hmm.
putting all this callback queue, all callbacks from the callback queue into the
Mm-hmm.
main thread. That also have some
Correct.
priority. For example, prior promises have higher priority, and a set timeout will
Right.
have a lower priority.
Right, right, right. Great. Now, can you tell me about a prototype in JavaScript? Like, what do you understand by prototype?
Yeah. So every like in JavaScript, basically every object has a prototype, and
Mm-hmm.
it like in JavaScript we achieve inheritance via prototype. So for example, if I create an object, right, so there will
Mm-hmm.
be a like prototype property in that object,
Correct.
and that will like take values from the like the top level. So
Mm-hmm.
for example, if I have a function, right, and I am creating an object from that function, or class also,
Mm-hmm.
same thing. So if I am creating an object from that function, now whatever like whatever details available in that prototype function, right,
Mm-hmm.
this child can also access those properties. So
Right.
basically, in JavaScript, we have prototypal inheritance, and it's not like normal inheritance in other languages. So inheritance is like established in the JavaScript using prototypes.
Okay, great, great. Now, my second last question is key. What do you understand by memoization? Have you heard this term?
Yes, yes, I have heard this term. So
Yes.
basically,
Yeah.
memoization uses the concept of closures, and
Hmm.
like we can memorize a value and like check for it first. So for example, I'm doing a API call, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like it's kind of a get request. It's not a thing that will
Mm-hmm.
be changing repetitively. So what I can do is I can cache this value, this get request like response I can cache. And next time
Okay.
whenever someone calls, right, this get request, I can first check
Mm-hmm.
if it is present with me and directly use that instead of calling the API again. So that can be achieved via memoization. For this, we also have like different services like Redis. We have Redis
Yeah.
keeps the keys and values as a cache, and like it's kind of
Right.
using the memoization concept.
Okay. Great. Great. Now, my last question is key. What do you understand by event bubbling?
So event bubbling means like whenever we click on element in DOM, right? So this particular
Mm-hmm.
event, like on change or on click, this will be moving up like from the child to the parent and then to the parent and then to the parent.
Mm-hmm.
So in this way, if for example we have a navigation bar and we have five links
Mm-hmm.
there. So on each link, I want to do a certain same task, right? So there
Okay.
can be two methods. One can be in all the links, I will be adding the same uh, function, right? On click, do this. On click, do this. Five
Mm-hmm.
links, I can add one by one. What I can do is I can add it directly into the parent. So what will happen if
Mm-hmm.
we click on this child? This flow will go to the parent only, and this code will
Mm-hmm.
be executed. Basically, I don't have to repeat it five times. And second thing is some other day I want to add a sixth link as well, right? So that will
Mm-hmm.
be handled or that will be handled automatically because everything is handled by parent, right? And parent will remain same.
Correct. Okay, great. So I think that's it all about JavaScript. Now let's move on to some React questions.
Yeah.
So first of all, I would like to ask you, how do you pass different data between different components in React? Like, how do you pass, let's say, you have five components and you want to pass the same data or same, let's say something to all the components. So how do you do it?
So like we can use props for this, like
Okay.
passing the data via props. But that also depends. So if the data is like if I'm passing a data from A and like
Hmm.
the data is required at D and BC
Yeah.
components don't require
Yes.
this data. So what I can
Yes.
do is like keep this data in some kind of a like context or some kind of a global store and directly use it
Hmm.
because I don't want to like pass data to those components which are not using it. Right.
Correct. Correct. So that was my next question was, ki, let's say you want to pass the data at the fifth level, let's say E or F level. So what do you use to, handle a situation like this where you don't want to pass like to every each and every parent, A to B to C to D to E. You want to directly pass from A to anywhere. So for
So
this, what do you use?
yeah, we use like in our project we use context for this. We keeping the states or like whatever setter functions in directly in the context, and this context will be available to all the components. So directly getting the access, don't have to pass into all the childs.
Okay, cool, cool. So have you heard about the term prop drilling?
Ah, yes, yes. This is called prop
Can
billing.
you
Like
explain?
yeah,
Yeah,
like passing to all the components,
correct.
even with some components even don't need that thing, right? But we still
Hmm.
passing it. So this is prop billing.
Yeah, so the same
This
thing.
can yeah,
Hmm.
yeah right. This can also make the like code little unmaintainable as well because
Right,
it's
right.
difficult to track right what is going where in like in a production application where there are so many components and all.
Mm-hmm. So, can you tell me like which one is better or when do we use what? One is, let's say, Redux and another is context API. So do you know about both and do you know key when should we use what?
Yeah. So context API and Redux both are used like for store management, like for state management,
Hmm.
like
State management. Hmm.
keeping the states at a global level or at a top level. So all the components
Hmm.
can use. Now, like where should we use? So basically, like Redux should be used in like bigger application, enterprise scale application. Why? Because it's
Right.
kind of more efficient and this thing like context is not that efficient. It can be used with
Hmm.
smaller applications, and also the React team says that we should use context only with those states which are not changing very frequent. For example, the theme of a website that does not change
Hmm.
very often, right? So there we can use context. And for example, a cart state which changes very often, like on every step it is changing, something is getting
Hmm.
added, discounts are getting added and all. So there we should use Redux and yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah, that's right. Now, can you tell me some limitations of React? Like, what do you think React is missing, or what are the limitations of it?
So React is not a framework; it's a library, right? And it does
Right.
not come with any hard and fast rules to do things. Like you can do it anyways. Like you can call API wherever you want. You don't have to follow a
Mm,
structure. On the contrary, for example, we have Angular. So that is a framework that will bring its own rules that define the services
mm-hmm.
here, call the services in this way only. But React does not bring anything like that. So this is one advantage of React as well. It is very easy to learn and people
Right.
can understand easily. But it's also a disadvantage. Why? Because like people come and do things randomly. They don't follow code
Mm-hmm.
practices. And at the end of the day, like when 6 months or 8 months pass, so the project will be very messy because there is no particular guidelines we are following. We are just doing whatever. Like people are doing whatever they want. They are not following a
Okay.
proper architecture. So I think
Mm,
React does not bring architecture with it. It's just a library.
mm.
And that's a disadvantage with React. No,
Okay.
no hard
So
and fast rules.
let's say, let's say ki a company is there, think in terms of a company. So I am currently a startup, but I know that for sure I'm gonna go big in next 5 years. So should I choose React as my framework?
Yeah, React can be used. Like I will also recommend them to use some kind of a production framework. So now, as of now, React team itself tells to use Next.js. Now Next.js will
Hmm.
bring their own Next.js is a framework and it
Mm-hmm.
brings its own rules. So use React and Next.js both if you want to have a very scalable option, or
Mm-hmm.
like in 5 years you want to do a big thing, or either use Angular. Angular
Okay.
you can also use, but that also depends. Like Angular is not that much in demand, so you won't be getting many developers to work. Like
Mm-hmm.
that in that terms also we have to think.
Okay. Great. Great. Now my next question will be, can you tell me the difference between controlled and uncontrolled components in React?
So basically, control and uncontrolled components depend upon the how this the values of these things are changing. For example, if I have an input tag, okay, and I'm not doing anything, like I'm not controlling the value of this using the
Mm-hmm.
value attribute with a state. For example, if I'm typing, I'm not using any kind of a state to control this value. So then that thing is an uncontrolled component. We are not changing it. It's just the UI we are typing, right? And
Right.
other thing can be there is a form and all the particular values, right? Like the name, the email address, all are controlled. Like whenever we are
Mm-hmm.
typing, we are changing that state, and that particular thing is getting reflected in the input box. Because why? Because we have used value is
Mm-hmm.
equals to that particular state. So that is a
Correct. Correct. Correct.
controlled by us. Otherwise, it can be uncontrolled, controlled by the DOM. We can say, like the natural
Okay.
HTML
Great.
without a value tag.
Got it. Now, my another question will be, can you tell me a few ways that you can optimize the React app performance? Some few techniques through which you can optimize. Yeah.
So basically, like first technique which works like very much is using React.memo everywhere. So
Mm-hmm.
React.memo is just kind of a pure component. We can say in class components we have some pure component. Basically, what it does is
Mm-hmm.
it will compare the props and state, and if the props and state are before our render, whatever the props and state
Mm-hmm.
are there, and after the render, whatever props and state are there, if both the things are same, right, it won't re-render the component because it does not need, right, as the props are not changing as the state.
Correct.
So first thing is using React.memo everywhere. In every export, we should use React.memo. Next is like in every function, we can use callback and use memo. So what happens is when we have a function, right? It's an object, and even if the function is same, so I'm using React.memo, right, to optimize the performance. Or like we will be doing a comparison between the props and the states. But now, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm passing a function in the props, and this function are objects, and what happens in JavaScript is two objects cannot be same. Like until and unless the memory address of these objects are same, right? They won't be
Mm-hmm.
considered same, even if they are same, right? Like if I have a
Right.
function which do 3 steps, another function which do at the exact 3 steps, but still
Mm-hmm.
JavaScript won't say that these two are same. it checks for the memory reference of these objects.
Correct.
So to keep that memory reference same, we can use callback for functions, and for objects and arrays we can use mem. So now this memory reference will be same. So whenever there will be a comparison, right, in props,
Mm-hmm.
that will like pass, like that will be true. That
Correct. Correct.
after, before render and after render both are same. Otherwise, what will happen is the memory references are different, and even if we are using React.memo, that won't make difference,
Mm-hmm.
because like what I explained, right, objects are not same. Only it is
Correct. Correct.
on behalf of memory address. So this is like using use callback, use memo, and React.memo. Other thing is using some frameworks like Next.js, what I said earlier. Those
Yes.
frameworks brings like many things like code splitting, lazy loading on its own. Maybe a framework like Gatsby. If you don't need the whole Next.js bundle,
Mm-hmm.
you can bring Gatsby. It's lightweight.
Okay. Yeah, that will be enough. Yeah. Am I
Can
audible
you can
now?
you repeat my mic off?
Am I audible now?
Yeah, yes, you are.
Okay, great. So right now I want to give you a particular situation. Okay, I want you to tell me like how do you handle it? Let's say ki you have a page. Okay, you have to build this thing. You have a page. You have a button there. When you click a button, click on the button. Below that button, a pop-up should appear like a modal. Okay, a pop-up should appear. Now you have to close that modal. If you click outside the modal, and if you click outside the button, so if you click anywhere except the button and modal, that modal should close. Okay, so how do you handle this situation? Like, how do you first open the model, and how do you close it? You can
For,
use React, JavaScript, whatever you want.
yeah, for opening the model, we can have some kind of state. Like when we click on
Right.
button, that state will change, and this particular thing will show on the screen. Now
Correct.
on close, right? Like whenever we, so basically in
Yes.
React we do have models, and on those
Yes.
models we have overlay, right, which is behind the screen.
Yes.
Sometimes
Let's
it's
say
visible.
ki my that model component is very complex and I have to develop it custom. So I am not using any framework, or let's say ki I'm not using Bootstrap or anything like that. I built the model custom and I want to close it through myself only. Like I have to write some code to close it. Then how do you handle it?
Yeah. So what I will do is, like in this case, what I will do is just trying to mimic that overlay thing, right? So what
Mm-hmm.
happens in React Bootstrap is we have a model, we have an overlay also.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we make it
Mm-hmm.
visible, a little dark kind of thing, or
Correct.
sometimes it's not visible. What we can do is we can also make him like what do you say, overlay. So what will
Mm-hmm.
happen is whenever someone clicks outside, right, the click will be
Mm-hmm.
on overlay, because it is like on top of all the elements. So basically
Mm-hmm.
what happens is we have various elements right on the DOM stacked together. So what I will do
Mm-hmm.
is I will create an overlay which is at the top, like which has the highest Z index. So
Index. Mm-hmm.
yeah, Z index. So this overlay just below the model. So whenever someone clicks outside, and I will make this view, like the color and the like opacity of this overlays, like such that it won't be
But
visible
let's
to
say
anyone.
ki if you make the acha okay. So you are saying ki let's say if I uh, create on close button, let's say if I click on anywhere except the button and the model, so you will have a overlay on top of everything. So the Z index will be highest. And now when you click on that overlay, you will change your state to let's say off, false.
Correct, correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool, cool. So my last question will be, have you used error boundaries in your any project in your the React project that you are making in your company or personal project? Have you used error boundaries there?
yeah. Error boundaries, like I have used, and what we have done is like keeping a error boundary for the whole application. So if the application fails due to certain reason,
Mm-hmm.
then error boundary will have what do we say, like a backup UI, and it will show
Mm-hmm.
us like uh, a backup UI if the API fails, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
it will show that it's not available as of now. Something went wrong. Some error like message like that. Change the UI completely, unmount the app, and like mount the error boundary. So it's a class
Correct.
component. Error boundaries don't cannot have functional components, and it have two functions, I guess. Component did catch, and one more I don't remember as of now. So using that, we
Okay, okay,
can show the backup UI, and we can also have the loggers. Like there's one more function in error boundary, which helps us to log the error, like what is the error coming. So we will be able to
correct.
know what is the issue.
Okay, okay, got it. So Shubham, you have quite a good experience in terms of like front-end development. So can you tell me some cases like where you faced an let's say a challenge during your work in your company or anywhere while making a personal project? Like what challenges did you face while creating any, let's say, any component or project? Any major challenge that you have faced till now, and how do you solve it?
So first challenge that I faced that was very difficult for me is we had a very complex form, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so first we built it for actually the requirement change. So first we build it for a particular scenario. We have a very big complex form. We have built it. Now what the requirement was to make it generalized. So that particular form will be used throughout the site wherever that particular information is required. So for example, we have a
Okay.
form in which we are entering all the details of that particular eyeglass. So my first company is an e-commerce store, right? And that
Mm-hmm.
they were selling eyeglasses. So like the left
Okay.
power, the right power, frames, and all the details, right? It's a very big form. So now the
Correct.
challenge was to separate the UI layer and the logic layer, business logic layer. Why? Because
Mm-hmm.
like now we have to show this UI somewhere else as well, and whatever business logic we have written it for the first time, right? Sometimes it is not the same as well. So if I'm
Correct.
showing that particular form in account, my account, then different things will happen. It won't have like the same logic. So separating
Mm-hmm.
those two things, right? Business logic and the component layer, that is kind of a challenging task for me. And I did it like for the first time as well. And
Mm-hmm.
from there, I have learned a lot of things. And now when I write code, like from the starting onwards, I make the layers different using hooks and all, using
Mm-hmm.
custom hooks. I always separate the business logic and the component, like the view layer, so that it is always
Correct.
reusable, not like nested everything together. So it will be like difficult to reuse. That is first thing. Second is there's one like feature, like end-to-end feature which I have
Mm-hmm.
developed, in which we save these prescriptions into the like Firebase and the
Mm-hmm.
Firestore basically, and then this
Yeah.
prescription also have a reminder. So when this reminder comes, right? So you set this reminder for 6 months. After 6 months, so after six
Okay.
months, it will also send a mail to you. So in that case, we have used SendGrid, and all the integration I have done on my own. So that was kind of a
Mm-hmm.
challenging experience because it was new and it was for the first time. I was working fully like from front end to back end everything.
Right.
So that was a challenging experience for me.
Okay, okay, that's good. And one last question I wanted to ask you, let's say कि if you are facing any challenge and you are not able to solve it, let's say 1 day or 2 days you're not able to solve it. So how do you cope up with that? Like how do you find solutions which you are not able to solve? Let's say you've Googled it and everything, you have done it, but you're not able to solve it. So what do you do at that time?
Yeah. So like first thing, what I will do is like maybe some senior, I will ask
Hmm.
for help, and like with him also I will discuss what are the progress I made,
Mm-hmm.
like whatever research I have done on it, and how we can do it in some way which is kind of a hack, if we have to
Mm-hmm.
implement it or not implement it in that way. And even if like the senior says that he no, it is not at all possible, then I will be like
Mm-hmm.
communicating the same with all the knowledge to our product manager, so that like there will be a very like clarity of what we can achieve. Things are always achievable, but it always comes as at a price. Like we can do something, but that will
Mm-hmm.
decrease the performance, or that will increase the load time of the application by a huge margin, or maybe by 5 to 10 seconds. So that will create a
Got it.
very large impact on the user set. So those kind of things must be taken up by the business. So how they want, and in that way, okay,
Mm-hmm.
if there is any situation like that, we handle. For example, in our one app, right, there was
Mm-hmm.
like, I've been given a task to align the whole app, like to align
Okay.
everything in the app. Right? Now the problem is. not the time. Time is a constraint. Like I have, it will take a
Okay.
lot of time to align everything.
Mm-hmm.
But the constraint is, even if I do everything right, uh,
Mm-hmm.
by the design, it was such a complex design. What they want is they wanted 22 columns throughout the whole app.
Okay.
We implemented
Mm.
for 12 columns. Now,
Okay.
the whole app is made up of hundreds of grids, right? If I change
Mm-hmm.
the base layer 22, I have to adjust everywhere. First thing, even if
Mm-hmm.
I adjust, right, whatever failing, right, there are hundreds of grids, right? Whatever failing, like if the columns and all are not equal, the things will be like collapsing with each other. It won't look good.
Okay. Got it.
Won't be
Mm-hmm.
able to figure out what is failing. So what we did is like we asked the designer back, and then we
Mm-hmm.
took it to product manager as well, because it's kind of a very big issue. If the application don't
Right. Right.
looks right, everything is collapsed together, then the whole customer experience is gone. So they
Correct.
finally what they made a decision is they don't want to do it. They just do a little bit alignment, but don't change the whole base layer from 12 to 20.
Right. 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 Okay. Okay, Shivam, I think that's it. It was great having you for the interview, and you have answered almost all of the questions, so that was really great.
Any feedback on how I can improve or anything?
Yeah, I think you can be a little bit more confident about your answers because all of the things you were saying was absolutely correct. I think just the little bit of confidence was missing. So the rest, the technical knowledge was great according to you, and you have quite a good experience also. So rest everything was great.